She blows on it.
Hey guys, so I put about 800 rounds through the Taurus Spectrum so far, so I guess you could call this a long-term review. To be honest, I was shocked by the number of views and the great responses that my first video got, so I figured that I'd do a follow-up. I wanted to address some of the things that I missed in the first video, respond to some of the great and not so great comments that the first video got, and really I just wanted to pump a ton of rounds through the gun to prove to myself that it was reliable. So I'll talk a little bit about the gun, then I've got some footage of my wife and I having some fun in the hills, and I'll wrap it up with some final thoughts. So the two main things that I forgot to address in the first video were the price of the gun and to give subjective commentary on the trigger. As for the price, I paid $249 plus tax. I mean, I've seen it cheaper online, and I guess I could have haggled to get the guy to price match, but seeing as I've probably already spent more on ammo for the gun than the gun actually cost, I figured it just wasn't worth busting the guy's balls for 10 bucks. The other main thing that I didn't discuss in the first video was the trigger feel. So the trigger feel is long, and it's definitely kind of heavy. Taurus has it listed at 7 to 9 pounds. I mean, it's definitely not a competition trigger, but for a quote-unquote get-off-me self-defense gun with no safety, I figured the trigger pull on the Spectrum is appropriate. The trigger does feel a little bit plasticky, and I guess feels on the cheap side, but it's nice and wide, so that's not really a big deal. Plus, I doubt that I'm going to spend the money to upgrade the trigger on a $250 pocket gun. Now, regarding some of the comments of the previous video, the main thing that I want to say is basically, don't knock it till you try it. Like I've mentioned, I have zero affiliation with Taurus, and I've never owned one before this gun. In fact, I was actually pretty darn hesitant to get the gun because of all the horror stories that I've read and I've heard about Taurus. So, you know, I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anybody, that we all like to justify our purchases, and that brand fanboys will inevitably tout their particular choice as the obvious best one. SIG guys love SIGs, Glock guys love Glocks, etc. But I'm telling you, regardless of what Taurus has or hasn't done in the past regarding their guns and quality control, the Spectrum has been flawless. Like, absolutely flawless. Either I got a gem, or Taurus has seriously stepped it up with this gun. I mean, I can't even say the same about my SIG 226, which is widely renowned as one of the best semi-autos you can buy. That thing will jam on occasion. And don't get me wrong, this Taurus certainly doesn't have the same build quality as, say, a SIG 238, which I consider to be, you know, the Cadillac of 380s. But I'm super impressed with it. I mean, it's been flawless. I didn't have to spend $500-600 on it. Oh, speaking of SIG, I got a chance to shoot the Spectrum side by side with the P365 at the range. I put 100 rounds through each of them, and let me just say that there's no doubt that the SIG is an awesome gun, and that it definitely feels more refined and better finished than the Taurus. That said, I wasn't blown away by the SIG enough to have to run out and get one. In fact, if anything, I left the range even more impressed with the Spectrum. The Spectrum's smaller, it's lighter, it's a little less chunky. It had less felt recoil than the SIG. Yeah, so, oh, I forgot to mention, the SIG was light years more accurate than the Spectrum at anything past 7 yards, so there's definitely that. But anyway, so here's some footage of the wife and I goofing around shooting the Taurus. She's not really a huge fan of shooting, but I figured it'd be fun to get a woman's perspective, plus she's a good sport. And she's way easier on the eyes than I am, and I look pretty stupid on camera. So anyway, afterwards I'll come back and we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So Gracie and I are going to go put some jacketed hollow points through the Spectrum to see if I can get the thing to stutter. I've got some low recoil Federal in there too. Gracie, what do you think? Which one should we do first? The Defender? Gracie doesn't care. Gracie wants treats.
Gracie!
She thinks I'm taking a picture. I'm recording video.
Oh
We're here with the lovely Mrs. Flynn and Gracie. Hi, Gracie.
Gracie, say hi.
And we're going to go ahead and shoot the Taurus Spectrum. We're doing long-term. I guess this is a long-term test, right? We put about 700 rounds through it. Mrs. Flynn's going to go ahead and shoot it, give us her impressions, and hopefully hit some targets. And Gracie's going to be in the car and try to not be freaked out. Okay, so we're out here continuing our long-term test with the Taurus Spectrum. I've got the lovely Mrs. Flynn out here giving us a hand, and so she's never shot the gun, so we're going to get her impressions. She's about as bad a shot as I am, so wish us luck. Go ahead, babe. Nice. Safe direction. All right. So, what do you think?
It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to rack the slide. There's no like awkward movement you have to do that. Pulling the trigger is easy. Not a lot of kickback. It's a really kind of gentle.
Right. Yeah.
Terrible shot.
Hey, you beat the snot out of that target. Nice work. Oh, hey, Mrs. Flynn, there's some shady characters coming up to you when you're out taking the dog for a hike. What do you do? Perfect. Okay, so first off, sorry for the silly videos. We were just having way too much fun out there. We put a ton of rounds through it, including 3 boxes of jacketed hollow points. It was the Winchester PD something Defenders, the Hornady critical defense rounds, and the Federal low recoil rounds. I was just trying to see if I could get it to jam. Plus we put more of the Underwood Extreme in there, and another box of the Winchester white box full metal jacket. So I have terrible news for all of you Taurus haters out there. There was not one single jam or stutter of any kind. To be honest, after all the crap that I've read and heard about Taurus, I was actually waiting for a jam the entire time, and it ran flawlessly. All told, we've put about 800 or so rounds through it. I've actually lost count at this point, but yeah, I can say confidently that this gun is as reliable as any gun I've ever owned. Don't get me wrong, there's a ton of great little guns out there, but I don't know, I like being different, and I wanted to give the Taurus a try, and I'm glad that I did because it hasn't disappointed, especially for the price. And just so you guys don't think that it's all sunshine and rainbows, there are a few things that I didn't care for sure. First off, the slide release lever is essentially non-existent. My wife had a really tough time with it, but not that big of a deal for a carry gun, but still. Secondly, getting the spring and guide rod back into the slide is a huge pain in the ass. You know, maybe my technique just sucks, and hopefully I'll get better at it, but let's just say, God bless captive springs. Excuse me. Lastly, my wife complained that she couldn't see the sights. I mean, yes, the sights are minimal, but it's a self-defense gun, and my wife's as blind as a bat, so that didn't really bother me. I have read that there are a few owners that have had some issues with light primer strikes, and they've actually sent their guns back into Taurus, so that's something to be on the lookout for, but luckily I haven't had that issue at all. So yeah, ultimately, after having really put this gun through its paces, I'm super pleased with it. Yes, I have to deal with my gun snob buddies giving me crap that's not a SIG or a Kimber or, you know, some other gun that's 2 to 3 times the price. But for a self-defense pocket gun, this thing is everything that I wanted. It's tiny, it's comfortable, and it's been friggin' reliable, man. So yeah, I'm loving the gun. I'm pumped that it's proven to be better than expected, and I'm glad that I get to gloat over my buddies about the money I've saved. So great job, Taurus. I hope you guys enjoy the review, and I wish you guys all the best. Now here's some videos of my wife and I being goofballs. Okay, since I love making Mrs. Flynn shoot stuff that is bigger than she is, we're going to go ahead and blast that weird cola on the left, the shaving cream in the middle, and the flour on the right. Go ahead. Safety's on, babe. Let her rip. Okay. And now the AR. Go ahead, babe. Let her rip. Empty the thing. So you gotta put the gun in her palm.
Yeah, I know.
She's looking at my face.
She's just so
My hands are covered in Cheetos. Gracie, what do you think?
She's so heavy.
Taurus Spectrum.